In the final video for Section 2, we will clue up Lesson 3 by examining a problem we will call the teacher dilemma. It again relates to outliers and the decision as to whether or not they should be used in calculating an average. Here are the results for 10 students on the most recent math quiz. We have 78%, 88, 70, 72, 75, 84, 86, 15, 83, and 76. The question we will ultimately answer: which measure of central tendency would best represent this data? The question I have for you at the beginning, however, is there a quiz grade that stands out more so than the rest? The answer is yes. The 15% would be considered an outlier. It is noticeably, significantly smaller than the other data values. The question becomes then, do we include it when we calculate our measures of central tendency? In this case, if we are determining the class average, all grades should be included, even if the 15% is an outlier. This is a legitimate grade and should be reflected in the overall class average. Let's determine then the three measures of central tendency: the mean, the median, and the mode. The mean. We're adding our data values again. 78, 88, 70, 72, 75, 84, 86, put in the 15, an 83, and a 76. These were the grades for 10 students in the class, so we divide by 10. When we add all of the quiz scores, we get 727 divided by 10. That will give us 72.7%. That would be the calculation for the mean average. Let's look at the median. Step 1, organize from least to greatest. We begin with the 15. 70, 72, 75, 76, 78, and 83, and 84, and 86, and the 88. We have 10 quiz scores. That's an even number, so we have two middle pieces of data. I grouped the first 4. I grouped the last 4. In the middle, 76 and 78. And the midpoint of 76 and 78 will be 77. Whether or not you show the calculation there of the mean of those two values, that's up to you. Either way, our median is 77%. Our mode? Are there any quiz scores that repeat? The answer is no. Therefore, there is no mode. We have a choice then between 72.7% and 77%. And the question is, which of these two values should we use to indicate the class average? Normally, in a case such as this, the arithmetic mean, the 72.7%, would be communicated as the class average. Please remember that in the calculation of mean, every data value is used in the calculation. And that's another reason why I would use mean in this case. If, however, as the teacher, I did not want the 15% to influence the overall class average as much, I would use the median value. Both measures of central tendency are acceptable here, but personally, I would choose the mean to best represent the overall class average. Let's make this situation a little bit more complicated. For the previous data set, would your response change if the context of the problem was that these are 10 quiz scores for the same student, and you, as the teacher, had to give an average for that student? Would you now include or exclude the outlier, the 15%? If you include it, would you use the mean or median grade for the entire set of data? If you exclude it, how much of a difference does it make? And again, would you use the mean or median value? Was there a reason for the 15%? Because obviously that quiz score is not typical for this particular student. Was there sickness? Was there a death in the family? Did the student forget to study? Would that influence your decision as to whether or not you would include the 15%? If we decide to include the 15%, we have already calculated the mean, which was 72.7%, and we found the median to be 77%. That's from the previous problem. How about if we exclude the outlier? So let's say we're going to say to the student, let's not worry about that particular quiz score. We're not going to include it in your overall average. What would happen to our measures of central tendency then? For the mean, we would be adding 78, 88, 70, 72, 75, 84, 86, 83, and 76, divided by, well, if we've excluded the 15%, we now only have 9 quiz scores. Add the numerator values, 710 divided by 9, that will be approximately 79%. So the mean, without the 15%, would be approximately 79%. Let's consider the median. First, we organize from least to greatest. Not going to start with the 15 this time, though. We start with the 70. 75, 76, 78, 83, 84, 86, and 88. 9 pieces of data. I grouped the first 4, I grouped the final 4. One distinct middle piece, so the median equals 78%. In terms of mode, there's no mode because no quiz score repeats itself. Now we have all of the values. What final decision will we come to? If I am the teacher, I will tell you that I will immediately eliminate the 72.7%. I would not let that 15% quiz score lower the student's average because the student has performed much better on the other quizzes. That then leaves the median of 77% if we include the 15%, and then we have a mean of 79% without the 15%, and a median of 78% if we exclude the 15%. Now, if we think about this, 77%, 78%, 79%, there's not too much of a difference in these values. Even with the guidelines I have given you, I would have no trouble with you choosing either of these 3 values to represent the student's average. You can make arguments to support whichever choice you make. If, for instance, the student received a 15% because that person forgot to study, I would probably include the 15%. If that student had been unable to study because of sickness or a death in the family, then I probably would exclude the 15% and choose either the 78% or the 79% as the student's average. Probably the biggest question here becomes if it's the end of the year and you're giving a student a final grade, if they're so close to 80% and they've been a really good student all year and worked really hard, would you give them the 80%? There's a question. The teacher's dilemma. And now I'd like you to proceed to the activities for Lesson 3.